So there you have it. Wow. This was a total beatdown, as you know. This episode is brought to you by Live Casino. Folks, it's all going down at the FanDuel Sportsbook and Lounge at Live Casino, where you can get in on all the action this football season. Bet on your teams with a sportsbook rep or at our self-service kiosks, and then jump into the stadium on our giant 40-foot video wall. How's that for a touchdown? Join your friends at Live Casino Pittsburgh, Route 30 at the Westmoreland Mall. Bet, watch, and win. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And I don't know what sort of insight I have for you guys that you didn't see. I'm just going to buzz through my game notes here. Saw it was very windy. I did the Steelers pregame show, and Missy Matthews was on it before me. Says really, really windy. Maybe you won't see that on TV. I think it was windier than it looked on TV. And I had a question going into the game. Pickett handle wind? ? Thought he did. All in all, I don't think he was the reason they lost. I thought this was a promising game by Kenny Pickett in his first start in a really rough situation, obviously, and playing from behind. Another youngster here, the Marvin Leal basically got the start in a four-man front. Highsmith on one side, him at the other defensive end, two defensive tackles in the beginning, knocked down two passes. So that was good to see from him. Special teams, I just have exclamation mark, massive in this game for both teams, but massive, massive implications with special teams, including kicking in the wind, fielding kicks in the wind, fielding punts in the wind, all those great things. Again, I'm just kind of buzzing as I watched it, and I'm going to do my usual stock up, stock down, thumbs up, thumbs down type of deal too. I like to usually start these Sunday episodes with, second half stats, but, or halftime stats, but this game was 31-3 at the half. I mean, Allen was 14 of 24 for 348 at the half, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Davis was two catches for 160, 2 touchdowns. Yards per play, Steelers were sort of respectable at 4.6. I mean, I'm not even sure the offense was awful in this game, all in all. Buffalo was at 11.8 yards per play in the first half. 11.8 yards every time they snapped the ball. Steelers ran for 18 yards in the first half. The Steelers running game is really putrid. I mean, really putrid. And I think people know when to tee off on it. It's often after they run the ball a very high percentage after pre-snap motion, and I think the world knows it. The run blocking certainly isn't great. Najee Harris isn't great. But they came out with big personnel against nickel, and I kind of like that approach. I mentioned that on Friday. Really did nothing on the ground, and then the game got away, and it didn't matter. Bills only 53 rushing yards at the half, but who really cares? It didn't matter. They weren't trying to run the ball. But total yards at halftime, 400 to 139. Ugh. So, I mean, it's probably easier for me to just kind of talk about a few of these things. They're 0-8 without Watt. I mean, that says volumes. Again, you don't need me to tell you his importance or how good he is. And they're trying to make up for it with Leal, and that's fine. Leal's going to be a thumbs-up guy for me. And Reed is now being relegated, it looks to, or at least in this game, to third and long situations. He's not really the answer. I was expecting a little more out of him. I'm curious to see what he looks like when Watt's in there as a rotational piece. Here's a number from this game, though, that's just unacceptable, which ties in with being 0-8 without Watt. Allen was only hit once in this game. Only hit once. Pressured 3 times. I mean, that's unacceptable. Because they threw the ball deep. They threw the ball a lot. And you got nothing against him. Against not a great offensive line either. Drops and letdowns by the wide receivers, Claypool and especially Deontay, not Pickens, are becoming more and more regular. Kenny didn't get as much help. You would think it's the other way around. The quarterback didn't help the receivers, but in this game, I thought it was the other way around, which in a way, and folks, really what we should care about, especially his next couple games until the bye, is Kenny's development. And I thought he was good. I mean, considering everything, considering drops, Deontay not helping him very often, but he does. Deontay does great things too. But I don't know. This is a hard podcast for me. You guys usually know I can get into things, but I just don't know what I have to add to things that you guys might have not have already seen. I mean, the Bills had 552 yards of offense and 38 points after being held to 19 and 20 points the last 2 weeks. This offense wasn't humming like crazy the last 2 weeks. Steeler D was so bad. And the one thing I'm excited to talk to you guys about, I assume tomorrow, are the defensive snap counts for the Steelers. I mean, they had to be so ugly. And what I mean by that is who's getting meaningful snaps, especially late in games. They had a lot of bad defensive football players out there. Far too much. And injuries, of course, are the biggest culprit. But they need the defensive depth is a little questionable. Big picture, when we're talking about offseason needs, I'm leaning more and more towards fixing the defense as opposed to helping the offense. And they'll probably have a lot of resources to do both. But I think Tomlin said it great, and we're going to get up to these stock up, stock down type guys in a minute. But he said something along the lines of in his press conference that it's really hard to evaluate individual performances when you're getting smashed. They just got crushed. They got smashed. He recognized it. The world recognized it. You recognize it. I recognize it. And it is. I mean, there is some merit to that whole burn the tape thing. I don't think that's the case, of course. I mean, they're never going to do that, especially with the rookie quarterback's first start. I think there's a lot of positive that will actually come out of that tape on the offensive side of the ball, especially the quarterback. Not that he was perfect, but it's hard to evaluate individual performances in such a lopsided game. So I'm going to take a quick break here. This isn't going to be a super long podcast. Again, I don't have a ton to tell you that you don't already know after such a debacle. But let's take a quick break. We'll come back up and talk about some thumbs up guys and, as you can imagine, more thumbs down guys. First thumbs up guy, and it probably will be the stress of my week, is really evaluating his play. But on first blush, as I said, I think Pickett was better than expected, passed the test. Wind, playing from behind, no running game, drops, the opponent. I mean, all those things were, fighting against him. And he still moved the football and looked the part. And even Romo said time and time again, Steelers got something here in this dude. And I agree. I think Warren is a thumbs up guy. And again, when you're getting smashed, it's hard to evaluate individual performances. But there was a couple backup types late in the game that I thought were doing good things against prevent defenses in a blowout. Obviously there's a huge asterisk there. But George Pickens is a star. Showed it again today. Pickett and Pickens to me are great building blocks. So again, let's give some positives here. I'm going to put Gentry and Hayward in that bucket with Warren. I know Gentry gets more regular snaps, but Hayward, once Freiermuth came out, did a couple good things and looked like the player at training camp I saw as a route runner and quickness for the tight end position. So Warren, Gentry, Hayward contributed in the fourth quarter in a productive, positive manner. reaching a little. You guys get that? I thought pass protection was pretty darn good on first blush as well. Across the board, not Dan Moore so much, but across the board against a lethal pass rush that was playing with the lead at home in a loud stadium for the whole time. I'm going to give pass protection a thumbs up. Mentioned Liao earlier. I think he didn't stand out in a massive positive way, but he's demanding more snaps. They like him. He's getting his hands up. I don't think he's an explosive edge rusher. I mean, asking him to play TJ Watt is a little bit out of character, but he's capable. So all this experience, I think, is paying off for the first 3 picks. That's for sure. It's nice that guys that are getting thumbs up are your first 3 draft picks, and your next draft pick could be showing up soon here too in Austin. Last thumbs up is standing up for your teammates. The fights at the end. I don't think that was Hamlin trying to destroy his former Pitt teammate or anything like that, but I loved how Daniels and company reacted. I really had a problem, not that it was malicious, but it was very dangerous. The dive at Pickett's knee late in the game, but I like that the Steelers' competitiveness, pride, showed up there and just didn't allow it to be okay. I mean, and frustration as well. I mean, I get it. Thumbs down. I think you got to start pointing the finger at Najee Harris. I mean, his blocking wasn't tremendous in the run game. I'll give you that. He didn't have a ton of opportunities. I just don't see him get much yardage that just about any other back in the league doesn't get. I don't see him creating. I don't see him being hard to tackle. Warren has more juice than he does right now. And that's a compliment to Warren, but it's also a knock on first back drafted a year ago. Deontay has to be a down because there's too many occurrences. It seems like every game where you say, boy, he should have caught that one or secured it a little better. We know his history of drops. I've brushed that off a little more than most analysts have in the past because you get drops whenever you get targets, and targets are earned, and a lot of his targets are in high contested areas, especially in the Roethlisberger era. But this trend is a little rough for me. Mentioned Dan Moore. There's a chance he only had 2 or 3 bad snaps. So I'm not going to single him out massively, but I don't know how you can ignore those several bad snaps. Late in the game against Von Miller, who's awesome, and in a crowded stadium with a big deficit. So not the easy situation for him either. Also a second-year player, but he didn't play well. Pass rush is a massive thumbs down to me. I mean, they should be able to generate more than 3 pressures and more than 1 quarterback hit. I mean, even late in the game when it didn't matter, they didn't get after him. I mean, the pass rush to me really is bad. I mean, I'm not seeing much interior pass rush. I saw very little from Highsmith in this game. Watt will fix it, but you got to do better than that. Bush is an easy guy to pick on. I didn't think he was horrible, but he did find his way in his thumbs down category for me. Looked a little overwhelmed from what I saw. Didn't make any splash. But his partner in crime, Spillane, I've said this so many times, he can't be on the field in defense and try to guard anyone man-to-man, that's for sure. And it looked like they played a lot of man again in this game, but he is a target all the time. I think you have to call out Boswell, who's a stud, but he missed 2 in this one, and he's missed a few this year, and not the easiest conditions in the wind. But I also think coaching. I think Tomlin's decision to kick the first field goal, the second one almost didn't matter because the game had no chance of being won at that point, is inexcusable. I mean, he drives me crazy with clock management, with game management, kicking field goals when you're down that much, punting on 4th and 1 type of thing. It's way too regular. I mean, it's almost like they've never looked at any kind of analytics in this at all. And I'm not saying analytics is king, don't get me wrong, but some of these are so glaring and just waving the white flag and just far too conservative. And I think the play calling by Canada was far too conservative too. You're down heavy and you come out run, pass, punt, run, pass, punt. You know, I mean, holy smokes, you know, when the game is still a chance you can win, but man, thumbs down, big plays. I mean, again, Buffalo deserves lots of thumbs up. Their whole team could be loaded with thumbs up, including Josh Allen, and they're going to win a lot of games. Maybe going to win the Super Bowl. Kind of thought that went without saying with this team before I got into this, podcast, but the big plays allowed, holy cow. I mean, big plays in general, thumbs down. And injuries. From what it looks like, Steelers got ravaged by injuries in this game. I mean, when that game concluded, Minka was their only defensive back in their top 5 nickel package. All 3 top corners, and Edmonds, who didn't play, and Spoon didn't play. Ogunjobi got hurt. Freiermuth looked bad on a concussion. I mean, like, that could that be multiple weeks? I mean, mostly on the defense, which does excuse a little of this. You're playing borderline dudes, and Jackson, who I didn't even honestly know was on the team until he got beat on that touchdown. So you're playing guys that don't deserve to be on the field against what's an elite football team. But, I mean, injuries are going to be something to talk about this week. There's no question about that, but that's brutal. So I'm recording this right before the Sunday night game. I mentioned that because it's a divisional game. We got Bengals-Ravens. I think the Bengals win that one, but that might sound stupid by the time you hear this. And I think those two are clearly the best teams in the division. But the Brownies did lose, despite Brandon Staley for the Chargers. Talk about the opposite in terms of analytics and coaching decisions. I mean, trust me, you can go too far. Case in point, he tried to hand the game to the Browns with a really dumb late coaching decision, and their rookie kicker missed it. But that was a very competitive game, Chargers-Browns. They got the loss, though. So, again, I mean, talking about the division implies the Steelers have a chance to win it. They absolutely do not. The stance I've been taking all week before this game is do what you can for these 4. And by the way, Miami is in trouble too. So that's not part of the murderer's row to me anymore, but Tampa is and Philly is. Get to the bye, and hopefully much optimism stems from after the bye with your young quarterback and progress week after week after week. And frankly, I'm predicting that. But this week is not going to be easy to do my job. I can promise you that. It's not going to be easy as a Steeler fan for the next couple weeks. But there is a light at the end of this tunnel. I mean, this is not one of these teams where you went all in. I mean, this was going to be their version of a rebuild either way. It's worse than expected. They also lost some games that coulda, shoulda, maybe won early. Not the Browns game, but the other 2. Also coulda, shoulda, maybe lost to the Bengals. For a while there, I didn't think they were a bottom 5 type of team. There's some really bad teams in the league, but they are definitely a bottom 7 or 8 type of team right now. Especially when you factor in the injuries and who's playing and who isn't. But I think KZ is close, and Watt is probably 2 weeks, I'm guessing, something like that. But I think you have to look at this in a different light because you have a first-round quarterback now for the first time in 20 years, and what I think he's doing is going pretty well. So, miserable game. There is certainly a burn-the-tape feel to it. An embarrassing feel to it. But we'll dig deeper into this and what this team is going forward, and maybe we'll go around the league for one of these podcasts this week too and stray a little bit away from the Steelers. So that's a wrap. I will talk to you tomorrow.